no more medicine. So now what? And that question is, what happens when you stop outsourcing your healthcare to the medical model? What happens when you don't reach for pharmaceuticals as your first intervention? And I think the bigger question is, what happens when you make symptoms not, the main thing, but you focus on your health instead? That's the question that we really want to answer today. We want to talk about how our family built a lifestyle around actually building health and not just treating conditions. So I love this topic. Often it's, if you have a fever, you suppress it. If you have pain, you medicate it. And if you have a diagnosis, then you label it and you treat it. If you have symptoms, you manage them. And that's just the way our healthcare system is really built. But what if there was a different way? So today what we're going to do is walk through the 7 major things that we've done in our family to really start moving that needle in the other direction. So what if symptoms weren't the problem? What if we treated the underlying cause? What if we got to building health so good that we didn't have to constantly be doing the patch and fix model?
Right. And what's really interesting about this is that there is a ocean between the idea that I'm holistic.
Yeah.
Like I want to do things in a very holistic manner.
Yeah.
This is how we want to live our life. We're crunchy. We're holistic. We're, like we want to live more in the way of like that we feel like God designed us to live. And then there's like this divide, might as well be the Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, whatever ocean you want to call it, to what does it look like in actual execution on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. So like when you're talking about that fever, when you have a fever in your body, what are you actually doing? Is there something, like, is there just a gripping fear so deep inside of you when your kids have a fever that you are like, oh my gosh, we just had to grab the Tylenol. And what's interesting
we hear that a lot.
You do, you hear it a lot, and you'll start to hear it in the language of people when they start describing, ask somebody about, a childbirth experience that they had, ask somebody about, a medical episode that they went through, or when just even in general, when people start talking about their health in general, sometimes, in fact, it's most of the time, it is so much overwhelmingly part of the time where people really grip onto the story, like these different stories that they either have been told by a doctor or told themselves.
It got so bad that we had to do this, or the baby got so big that I had to have a C-section, or their ear their temperature, it got so high that we had to do this. And I think that's a story we tell ourselves, or a story that we're told sometimes by physicians that is, hey, I know you guys like to do things natural, but that time has passed. Right. And the reason why people often live in that fear, and we hear this a lot, like parents come in and they start getting their kids under chiropractic care, and they're like, all right, we're doing this now. Well, your kid just started getting adjusted. Their immune system isn't as good as it's going to be after months of this, or weeks of this, or even years of this.
Right.
So when they do run into that first problem and something does go wrong, do you have other things that you're able to, stand on? And so each one of these is kind of how we built that health in our family. And it's really what I want for just all the patients, whether you have a family or not. I want you to know this for yourself, but I also want you to know it for your family. So,
what's really interesting, what you just said, I would be remiss if I didn't point this out, but what you just said is that we built this for our family. Yeah. And I think sometimes there's this idea that if you're going to go and try to live outside of the more traditional medical model, right? Yeah. Where I want to live outside of this traditional medical model where we're not going to jump to pharmaceuticals all the time. We're not going to jump to surgeries all the time. We're going to do things in a more holistic path. The idea is, for some people, they think that means that it's just the absence of that, and that's all you have to do. Yeah. As long as you just don't touch a pharmaceutical, you're holistic. As long as you just don't get a vaccine, you're holistic. As long as you just don't, get that surgery, or as long as you just don't get Botox, you're holistic. That's not the case. There's a whole lot of work on the other end of it. There is something that you build, and you build it brick by brick, and you build it every single day with all the decisions that you make. And you do it for your kids, you do it for yourself, you do it for your family. And it is literally something that you build. So as soon as you said that, that was the imagery that came in my mind. It was like, yes, we have have built it, and we are continuing to build it every single day.
Yep. I was talking to a woman this week, and her mom had back surgeries, and then she had, first she had injections, the painkillers into her spine, epidurals. Yeah. So she had epidurals, and then she had back surgeries, and then she had a spinal stimulator, and she actually died from from complications from all those things. And she died pretty miserable. And she was saying, my goal was to never end up on lots of medication. My goal is to never go under surgery. But as I'm sitting down with her, she's on like 7 medications, and she herself just had an epidural, and it worked. She felt pain-free for like 3 months, but then the pain came back, and now it's excruciating. And so I had the opportunity to, teach her and go over her x-rays and show her what was going on in her spine and how these massive headaches that she had been having and all this intracranial pressure was building up was as a result of her neck was in this terrible position. Now, is it the only thing? Probably not. There's probably other things contributing to it, but her cervical spine was terrible. And I showed her how the fluid that protects your brain, how it flows up and down the spinal cord, and why having a bad neck curve interferes with that. And then we looked at her back x-ray, and it was terrible. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's why I'm having pain in my spine. And yeah, the epidural got rid of the pain. But I said, while you were moving around in those 3 months where you had no pain, do you think that was getting better or getting worse?
Oh my gosh, right.
And she saw a new option. And I said, hey, this is like one thing, and it's a big thing. But now we're going to build on this, and you got to get your back stronger, and we got to start eating different to, eat for healing. And so I think the big question that we started to ask, in our family, my family, and then also I think your family is,
and our family together.
No, I meant your parents, my parents, and then our family.
Yeah.
How do I get rid of this symptom? I think the question is, what is the symptom trying to tell me about what's going on in my health? And I think that's the starting point. And that shift changes everything because, before we go any further, let me make this clear. We're not anti-medicine.
Yeah.
There are times, there are emergencies where medicine can stop something, save a life. If you're bleeding out, believe me, there are surgical and medical interventions that are important to stop emergencies. But when it comes to building health, we really believe that, you're not a science project, that health isn't that complicated, but because we live in a country where food is, degraded so bad, and our lifestyles are busy and stressed and less active, and all these things add up to us having poor health. We got to get back to what's the answer. So, if you're not in the place where you're really excited about your health and you're asking, okay, not medicine, then what? Then the starting place, and, for me, it started, and that's why I put it as number one. It started with chiropractic care. And it wasn't just the care. The care was a huge part of it, but it was the philosophy.
Right.
It was the idea that chiropractic care was about looking at causes and not just addressing symptoms. It was asking the question, why is my body doing this? Why am I experiencing this? And how do I correct what's going wrong? Not just how do I get rid of the discomfort in the scenario. So, we started thinking neurologically under chiropractic care, because when you ask the question, why is something happening? If you go back far enough, you get to the nervous system. Another story. I was telling a patient this week, he worked in the medical field, and I said, your nervous system controls every function in your body. If you're going to heal, you have to have a healthy nervous system. He goes, explain that. And I like that question. Can you explain that?
Yeah.
And I said,
You're like, absolutely.
Glad you asked.
I am so glad you asked that question.
I said, so when you were growing up and you heard about your muscles, what system did they call it? And he goes, oh, your musculoskeletal system. And I said, yep, that's what they called it. When you learned about hormones, because this guy was working in the medical field, so he knew. So when you learned about hormones, what did they call it? And he goes, your endocrine system. I'm like, okay, when you learned about digestion, what did they call it? And he's like, oh, that's your digestive system. Right. And I said, do you know what they call those now? And he's like, no. I mean, still the same, isn't it? I'm like, no, it's not. They call your musculoskeletal system now your neuromusculoskeletal system. And they call your gut your digestive system, or your neurogastrointestinal system. And they call your endocrine system, your hormones, your neuroendocrine system. Right. And if you keep going, your skin, pretty soon they're going to call it your neurointegumentary system. And they're going to keep going because they recognize that the nervous system is what's controlling everything, and that it becomes more obvious in the muscles, because when nerves aren't healthy, muscles don't fire, and it becomes noticeable in the gut because we now see this gut-brain connection. Mm-hmm. And it becomes noticeable in hormones because we know that when we're under stress and our nervous systems are suppressed, that our hormones don't function as well. But nobody's talking about it in the skin yet. They will, right, but nobody's talking about it in the skin yet. And so that's the start, was really getting to this idea that health and healing come from inside out, and they start with your nervous system. I promise we're not going to just talk about chiropractic, but it's the foundation.
It is, and I think that basic premise of, if you are a healthy person, you are somebody under chiropractic care. Like if you are somebody that is going out there and you're getting in the sauna and you're doing cold plunging and you're thinking about your nutrition, and you go and you work out and you have these things that you're working on in your health, if you are a health-minded person, you are also somebody who's under chiropractic care. That is, and chiropractic care is foundational to all of it. And here, I'll even say this: if you are an unhealthy person, chiropractic care is the easiest thing to be foundational in your health, because literally you just have to walk in and lay down and receive an adjustment. I mean, there's so many other pieces that we're going to help guide you through. But if you choose to do nothing else, if you don't choose to change your nutrition, if you don't choose to work out, and I think it would be silly not to, but if you don't choose to do anything else, having chiropractic as the foundation of your health is the single most impactful thing that you can do, because your nervous system controls and coordinates. Yeah, and everything. It
sets you up for such a great foundation. I mean, I talked to 2 people this week that have cold plunges and saunas in their house. Yeah. They spent thousands of dollars. People are buying red lights, for healing and activating vitamin D and activating, changing hormones and decreasing cortisol. I bought a cold plunge face tub. So like literally putting my face in ice cold water, and it's awesome. I love it. But all of that works because of my nervous system. So the one thing I want my patients to understand, the one thing I want, our watchers to understand, is that chiropractic is something we do to be healthy. It's not something we do because things are wrong. Yeah. And most people walk through our door, and I hope there's a day where this starts to change, but most people walk through our door because they're looking for a solution because something's wrong. And chiropractic is something we do when things are right. We get adjusted to stay aligned. We get adjusted to have a well-functioning, well-adapting nervous system. We stay adjusted to make sure that our body is functioning at optimum. So number 1 is chiropractic care. And then number 2, this is an interesting one, but we really changed our thoughts on healthcare when it came to, like, when it's you and I, it's kind of our personal decisions and our habits or whatever. But when you have a child, now you go, wait a minute, how am I going to keep this kid healthy? And so I think we kind of changed our healthcare a lot when it came to having children. And that even changed all the way from the birthing process. You were planning on having a hospital birth with a midwife. Right. And we got to the point where you decided to have 3 natural births at home. And it's not to say it's easy, and it's not to say it's not without its own, challenges.
And but nobody gives you an award. I also have been waiting for that to come in the mail, and it's never happened. So you got you
did get it. It was
just it was
wiggling and crying.
Yeah, it was a baby at the end of it.
Was it the best award?
No, listen, it wasn't. It was because there was something that was just really deep inside of me that when we walked through that at 32 weeks, we walked through that hospital tour, and I thought, I can't be in here to bring life into the world. Like, this is not where I want to be. I don't feel comfortable. I don't like it. I don't like what they're telling me that they're what the process is gonna be. And this could be a whole nother podcast episode. But I just didn't like any of it, and I didn't feel comfortable, and I didn't feel good there. And so what I said was, I'm gonna go do it at home. I'm gonna do it where I feel good. And I remember in the middle. I wouldn't say the middle. It was more towards like 3/4 of the way through labor. I remember looking at my midwife and saying, "This is where I would have taken the epidural."
Yeah, this is where I would have done it.
And she kind of laughed at me, and I was like, "This is where it is. Like, I'm there." And she's like, "Yeah, you're there. Like, we're almost done."
And there was something to be said about removing the option.
Right. There was something for me that was wonderful. I loved it. I did it.
Or if you were going to get an epidural, you would have had to jump in a vehicle, go to the hospital. You could still get gotten an epidural if you needed it.
Right.
When I think about changing healthcare with our kids, you and I, full disclosure, were uninsured. You had changed jobs.
Yeah.
I was self-employed.
Yeah.
I was self-employed when we had our firstborn. And so we were uninsured. And so one of the first things we had to do is like, hey, we're going to have a baby. We should probably like have insurance. But then we started looking at the insurance models and realized they didn't serve our philosophy. Right. And so when I talk about changing
health, such a kinder way of saying it than what I was going to say, but yes, they didn't serve our philosophy.
They didn't serve our philosophy because everything, when you're shopping insurance, it's symptom, diagnosis, treatment, symptom, diagnosis, treatment. And we're like, that's not really how we operate. What about like flex spending or HSAs? And those are pretty limited. You can only put so much money away in them. Sure. So then the mindset went from, okay, what if we didn't have insurance? It costs the average person about $7,000 just in premiums. The average person spends... Which,
by the way, that was, $2,009. Yeah. The latest, what we're looking at right now, I mean, I had a patient come in that I had a conversation with this week that their healthcare premiums were going up to $1,900 a month for a family of 3. It's just the 2 of them and a baby. That's wild.
Yeah, so it's $24,000 a year.
Wild. Right.
So for 3 people, $24,000 a year. I mean, their families that they're spending $30,000. Now, whether you're paying for it or your employer's paying for it, you're paying for it because that would have been part of your salary if it wasn't part of your benefits. Sure. But I mean, imagine what you could do if you were able to put away $22,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And this was where my mindset went. All right, what if we didn't do that? Right. What if we could put away $22,000 a year? After 5 years, we'd have $100,000. Yeah. There aren't a lot of things that go wrong that are going to cost more than $100,000 unless they're really major. Right. And if they are, people take on medical bills. Even if they have insurance, they take on medical bills. But I just wasn't really comfortable with that. So we actually started looking into health sharing companies. Yeah. So there's lots of them out there. We use one called Samaritan Ministries. There's one called MediShare. There's lots of them now. When we were looking, there was kind of 2 or 3 major ones. Yeah. But these health sharing companies, essentially they work like insurance companies, but they pay the direct cost. And what we found was they actually covered the things we want to do. They covered our midwife. They covered a home birth. Yeah. They covered massage during pregnancy. They covered your supplements and your prenatals. They cover our supplements that we take for our health, where pharmaceutical companies, maybe through your HSA, they will, but these companies covered supplements. They covered these things. They cover chiropractic. They covered the things that we were looking at our lifestyle. So number 2 was we changed our healthcare model to match our health philosophy.
Yeah, and I think that there's something, and maybe it's just me on this, but if we were in a more traditional, I mean, if I was this mom that I talked to this week, and we were spending $1,900 a month on our insurance premium just to have the privilege of utilizing, that healthcare card on a regular basis. And by the way, when you put that card down, what does it actually get you, right? But if I was engaged in that system, then there would be something inside of me that would feel the need to try to utilize it. Yeah. Like, what are we paying for?
Yeah.
So let's get the benefits.
How do I get the most out of this?
How do I get the most out of it?
Well, you see this at the people at the end of the year. They're like, I'm going to go get everything done because my deductible resets next year. Right. They're like, I'm going to go get that MRI I've been putting off. I'm going to go get that test. I'm going to go have some blood work done. I'm going to have this. Well, the doctor's job is like, in my mindset, if a patient comes in and they're bringing testing and it's normal, I don't feel guilty at all going, you look great. Right. We did all the testing. Everything looks good. But I think so often, because of the treatment mindset, when people go to their physician, they see one marker off and they're like, oh, your blood pressure, this. Let's start treating it. So unfortunately, just your choice and model dictates the outcomes that start happening. And so you're like, I'm just going to go get these things done just to make sure. Well, sometimes they start treating things that your lifestyle could actually be appropriating for. Right. And so that is a huge piece of that. So the third thing, and this might surprise some of you guys, because I think this one is probably one of the most practical investments we've made. So honestly speaking, this may shock some people, but the next thing we did was we hired a chef. And before you think we're bougie, I want to get into this. This is actually very affordable. And when I talk to families, they don't fail because they don't care. A lot of times they fail because of convenience. And it's easy to go through that drive-through. It's easy to eat out more. It's easy. And then what you find is you're in a pattern, and you're in this pattern that isn't building health. And so if you go back to previous episodes we've done, when we talk about eating out, it's like, no, don't get me wrong. Everyone likes to go out. Everyone likes the environment. It is fun, but what you don't realize is even just the quality of the food is terrible. The oils they're cooking it in, how much sugar is in things you're eating. You don't realize like it's not the same. And so one of the biggest investments we made, and I say investments, not biggest in terms of money, but biggest in terms of impact, was hiring a chef.
And before you think it's like Jeeves that's there every day, all the time.
No, he comes in once a week. Somebody
that
4
helps,
hours.
somebody that come help, and there's lots of variations of this, right? Like sometimes there's a mother's helper that comes in and they just help you prep. They just help you chop things up so that you can put them in the containers correctly, right? Sometimes it's somebody that comes in and they're just doing a few meals. You know, they're knocking you out a couple dinners a week so that, you know, when you're running all over towns with sports or doing whatever you need, you always have something there so that you have it sectioned out so you can grab it and you're eating, you know that you're eating the right lunch, you know that you're eating the right dinner. Sometimes it looks like, you know, somebody that's there that there's lots of different services when you start looking in our city of Cincinnati or even, you know, around of people that are actually making meals inside their own home, and they have like a weekly menu that they put out, right, where you can go and you can make sure that we got good oils, we got good food, we have good ingredients going in there, and we just have fresh homemade food that we're buying, you know, from the people.
And there are levels of this. There's a restaurant right down the road that does this. They have a freezers packed with food, fridges and freezers packed with food, and it's way healthier than what you'd be eating out. Actually, I'll just say the name. The one locally is called Clean Eats, and the reason that we have never used any of these store ones is because when we go through the ingredient list, it's like 80, maybe 90% what we would do. And restaurants might be like 90% the wrong way and 10% what we would do. So those are definitely great options to start, but we decided, hey, we want to control all the variables. So hiring a chef and buying the food that the chef is working with, we knew we had complete control over it. But again, most people fail because of convenience. And so I think the big question and the thing that shifted this for us was we asked the question, how do we make it easier to eat healthy more regularly? And then that became the solution. So it helped to remove the friction. It helped make nutritious food more convenient than unhealthy food. It's interesting. It's stacked up. It's in our fridge. It's easy to even grab. If we're going to go to a soccer game, we can grab 2 or 3 meals and go. So every meal is telling our body something. I think that was the thing, is that we wanted to constantly be stimulating, promoting healing in our body. And so we wanted, you know, better food and to make it convenient so that we didn't fall victim to the rules we talk about. We don't eat through a window and we don't eat from a gas station. And those seem very basic, but how often, you know, people are like, yeah, we try not to eat fast food. And then when you really look at it, you're like, oh, wow, we're going 2 and 3 and 4 times a month. Right. Some people it's 2 and 3 and 4 times a week. Right. So this was a great way. And the neat thing about this too, is when you go through a drive-through, it's like, what do you want? Oh, I want this and I want that. And everybody has the one kid in their family that doesn't eat as healthy or whatever. Well, when we're all eating the same thing, that changed the pattern in our family too, and the mindset of, absolutely, no, we're all eating this. Yep. Like, I don't like this. Well, we're all eating this. Ashley's got a great rule, is like, you're allowed to not like one thing. You know, so if there's one thing you don't like in a meal, but it's like, you don't get to exclude the whole meal. Right. So one for a couple of our kids, I don't know where we went wrong on this one, but squash. Zucchini was like a couple of our kids. And so, you know, zucchini, it's like, all right, you know, we'll exclude zucchini from most of the recipes, but you don't get to say that about everything at every meal. So ours, just to practicality wise, we got a guy that we found, he does meal prep for athletes. He's awesome. And he comes into our house typically on Wednesdays or Thursdays, because we like to have stuff for the weekend and then also going into the beginning of the week. So basically he comes over, we buy all the food. And what that looks like is we just buy a bunch of vegetables and we buy a bunch of protein. And then he comes over and he like looks at it and he's a wizard. I don't know how he does it, but he makes his own dressings, his own sauces. We hired someone who understood health and understood. How many did you interview?
5 or 6.
Yeah, so we found someone who spoke our language and understood, and he actually eats this way. He's very fit, very healthy individual. So he comes over for about 4 hours, and he makes, I would say, 3, sometimes 4 total meals that we will eat, and probably enough to actually be 2 meals each sometimes.
Yeah.
And so, some of it's grab and go, and some of it's like we're actually going to cook the whole thing and sit down and have a meal together. And it's just been very convenient. I'll tell you guys, if you don't think you can afford it, you're already spending the money on the food part. So it's just the hours that you're paying that person to be there. So if you look at 4 hours, what is 4 hours for somebody like that to come in and work? You're probably also already spending that on the markup of convenience on takeout food or fast food or whatever. So for most people, this is actually a lateral move and it doesn't add cost.
Right.
Next one is we use plant-based medicine. And I use that term because there are times where things happen. So for instance, we don't use traditional bug sprays. We use things that have lavender and have some essential oils in them. We don't use, if our son broke his finger.
Yeah.
He was playing lacrosse and he broke his finger. And rather than painkillers and anti-inflammatories, we use things like curcumin, frankincense, helichrysum. And this takes a little bit of education, but there's some great resources online. You can get on YouTube and watch videos and you can go. But I think the thing that most people fail to recognize or don't understand about plant-based medicine is they think like, oh, that's hippie stuff.
Yeah.
that's frou-frou medicine.
Right.
And they don't realize that about 80% of your pharmaceutical drugs are actually copies of chemicals that have been taken and they're derived from plant-based compounds. Right. So the examples I tend to use are like aspirin, the chemical in aspirin. Some of you guys may be familiar with the name. It's called salicylic acid. Salicylic acid is a synthetic copy of a chemical called methyl salicylate. Methyl salicylate is actually found naturally occurring in high potency in wintergreen oil. So if you have an ache or a pain, joint issue, whatever, rubbing some wintergreen oil on it, you're getting methyl salicylate, which is a natural version. It's really effective. It's a great painkiller. There's arnica. There's all these different things. When it comes to ear infections, our kids never really had ear infections, but they would sometimes like tugging on their ear. You could tell they're in a little pain. Typically, they would get adjusted and it would go away, but we would use an ear oil. And ear oil is literally just olive oil and garlic. And so what they do is they heat up the olive oil at a low temperature and they add garlic to it and it releases a chemical in the garlic that is a natural antibiotic. And then they strain it and they bottle it and make sure it's pure. And then you can drip this literally right into the ear and you have natural antibiotic properties right in the ear. So there's lots of plant-based options for those just common things. I was talking to someone the other day. This isn't plant-based, but nebulizers. So the person was telling me, his friend of ours said, I've had this cough for like over a month. And I'm like, oh my gosh, just reach out. We actually make our phone numbers available to patients for text messaging and reaching out to us. And she goes, well, what could I have done? Because they wanted to put me on prednisone and they wanted to put me on a steroid pack. I mean, was steroid pack and prednisone knock out a cough? Yeah, it'll knock out a cough. It'll knock out your whole immune system eventually too. And she goes, well, what would you have done? And I said, do you know what a nebulizer is? She goes, I've heard of it. And I said, they make these little ones. They're handheld. You can buy them on Amazon. Yep. And you put in water and you can add a little bit of, and I said, look it up. You'll see the research online. You can add a little bit of food grade hydrogen peroxide or a little bit of colloidal silver, and they both have antimicrobial properties, and it helps. Not only does the steam generated from it help to open up the lungs, but you actually can kill the virality of the problem or whatever's going on. And she's like, that's fascinating. So she came back to me, she read up on it. She's like, I've never even heard of this before. Like, yeah, that's what we would do with kids when they had their cough. So getting into just researching and learning about natural options, becoming your own doctor to some degree, the future of medicine. And I think the future of the patient is the patient actually becoming the doctor.
Right. And listen, there used to be like grandmas that would tell you this. Like there used to be like this whole generation. And the interesting thing is that we've really lost that. Like there's really not a lot of that anymore. But what's interesting is that one of the few, kind of bastions that we have left of that are those of us that are in the holistic field that now we get to help train those patients, not that we're the grant, but I mean, we're the people that are disseminating that information that used to be something that people really had knowledge of, all the families had knowledge of. And then all of a sudden, now there came along medicine cabinets, and then there was pharmaceuticals, and it was like, all of these other things that they started doing, when in reality, we have some really wonderful resources that are right at our fingertips.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's part of the thing that has been lost, is the handing down of things. Like it used to be a thing that you'd get grandma's recipe book. Yeah. But now that nobody cooks at home, everyone's like, I have grandma's recipe book, but it's got a lot of dust on it. But like, that was the whole thing with families. Grandmothers used to pass down these remedies, or, and some of them are crazy. If you ever watch, what was it? The Greek wedding movie, spraying Windex on everything. Like some of them are crazy. We're talking about like real things that worked, and like using herbs and using, proper nutrition and doing things the right way. But I didn't include fitness on this list, and it's not because fitness isn't a part of our lifestyle, but we didn't include fitness on the list because I think it's kind of its own thing in its own category. Yeah. However, what we do know about fitness is it's not just about being lean. It's not just about having muscles. There's a research that shows that fitness actually resets, blood sugar, your metabolism. It resets how your brain functions. It changes cortisol levels. It's been proven to work better than any antidepressant, or even any even with anxiety, it helps out. So just stimulating that nervous system and exercising and sweating and all that should be on the list, but that was not one of the ones that we selected. Number 6, and this one will also surprise you, given how the conversation's gone so far, but we still use emergency medicine. Yeah. So that being said, we started off with saying no medicine, now what? Yeah. The reality is there are still emergencies. Right. And so there are times we have had a broken bone with one of our kids. We have had, I'm trying to think, I had a weird eye problem. Mm-hmm. I got bit by a brown recluse spider. Right. With one of our births. You got some IV fluids because you had lost some blood during the process. We have used, but again, it's putting that's probably
the totality. We had a kid swallow a quarter.
We had a kid swallow a quarter, and we had a quarter not surgically cut him open, but they had to go in with like a little robot thing and grab it.
Yeah, grab it right out of him. And those are probably in totality
about 5 or 6 times maybe
that we have been to a hospital or a traditional medical facility to do something, because emergencies happen.
Yeah, they happen. And we're blessed to have the people there. So broken bone, major trauma, emergency situation, we're grateful that those systems exist. Our goal, and I'll state this, our goal is to never use it. And now that we've used it 5 or 6 times, our goal is to never use it again. Right. And that should be the goal, and it changes everything. And so that's why number 7, I think, is the most important was, and this could have been number 1, really, was we changed our mindset. Yeah. And so we went from a mindset of how are we going to, this is, like I said, it's number 1. Everything else really came from this. We went from not just throwing out medicine, but we tried to throw out the mindset of medicine. Yeah. And, we threw out thermometers too. Oh, yeah. We threw out, I was talking to a lady the other day. Yeah. She had an eating disorder. And she goes, I haven't stepped on a scale since. And I was telling her about this. The reason she brought it up is I was telling her about this really cool scale that measures all these different things in your biometrics. So you're not just focused on your weight, you're focused on how much muscle mass, how much fat mass, how much water mass, your biological age, and all this. And she goes, well, I threw out my scale because I had an eating disorder and I got obsessive over it. And I said, yeah, don't buy that scale.
Don't buy that scale then. Yeah. Yeah.
We tell patients frequently, like, throw out the thermometer, because when you really learn about fevers and you learn how the body works and how it regulates its temperature, all that thing is doing is giving you anxiety. Yes. And you're just waiting for it to get bad enough to then you're going to go do the thing. Right. So often, if you just look at your child, or you look at your spouse, or you look at whoever, and like the signs are there. If they're lethargic, if they're tired, if they're sweating, they're fighting it off still. And the temperature lies you. We did a great episode on temperatures and how high can they really get before they become, problemsome or worrisome. So, that's a great episode to go back and watch. But we're not just saying throw out your thermometer because the thermometer's bad. We're saying throw out your thermometer because it's part of the mindset of this treatment-based situation. So,
right. And it's kind of one of those things that's like, it's an all-encompassing, like when your mindset changes, then you don't keep pharmaceuticals in your house. And what was it? We had some kids over, my son, who's
the kid had a headache, and in our house, if you have a headache, you get adjusted. If you have a headache, you drink more water. If you have a headache, there are certain things that we do that are proactive and not just reactive, because the goal is not to get rid of the headache. The goal is to really help you heal in a way where that whatever was causing that headache, we're addressing that, not just the headache.
Absolutely.
So that kid came over and he was like, do you have any ibuprofen? And we don't have any ibuprofen. We might have some like in a first aid kit somewhere, but we don't have any ibuprofen. And he's like, what do you do if you have a headache? And my son goes, I get adjusted and I just like drink some water and try to go to sleep. And he goes, what? Like it's the 1800s? But that begs the question, like, what did people do in the 1800s? And I think so often we think, oh, we're better off because of modern medicine. But everything about modern medicine has gone up in terms of we have more cancer, more heart disease, more digestive issues. We have more diagnoses, more of this. I mean, we spend $4 trillion a year on medical treatment, and we're not really healthier as a population. In fact, we're more sick. And so this just tells us that changing the mindset and throwing out the symptom driven. So what we traded was addressing causes instead of addressing conditions.
Yes.
We started looking at subluxations and not symptoms.
Yes.
We started looking at nutrition instead of these nuances of things that needed to be addressed. And then when it came to even supplements, like what can support my healing, not just, what pill can I take to make my symptom go away? So the goal isn't trading one pill for another. The goal is one pill represents treating a symptom or a condition, and the other, a vitamin, represents supporting the body and getting the body stronger so that we heal and function really well.
Right. And I love it when you say cause over condition. Mm-hmm. Cause over condition, cause over condition. I mean, it's just a mantra that you can have when you talk about cause over condition. It's always how do we find out, how do we get to the bottom of, okay, I understand there's this condition here that you're saying, but like, what are we doing? What brought it on? What caused it? What's the cause? Because I don't want to ever treat the condition. I want to figure out the cause so that we can get to the bottom of it and we can really fix that.
And that really may be the greatest gift of all, is we're not preparing for fear. We're preparing for healing. We're preparing for we know that pain's going to happen. We know that injuries are going to happen. We know that you're going to potentially get the sniffles or a virus. So it's not about perfect health. It's not about symptom-free living, but it's the confidence in how our body was designed. It's the confidence in knowing that when it's all said and done, our body was made to heal, and our job is to support that healing. And like we were talking about, that this confidence in health, it's built, not prescribed. And so it's building it over time. Health doesn't come in a bottle. It comes through small decisions every day that add up and create amazing health. So we've been at this now, married for 18 years. Is that right?
Your guess is as good as mine.
I think 18 years. And parents for 15.
Yeah.
And, it's taken time to get to the level of confidence we have now, but that's what we do with patients every day, is help them. And one of the things I love about being a chiropractor is that patients get to borrow from our confidence. Mm-hmm. That they come in and they recognize it. They're like, I heard that story about when you had ear infections, and what do you do for your kids? And your kids have never had traditional pediatric care. So what do you do? And then we have an opportunity to share our confidence with them and help them to take steps and become more confident in this direction. And again, this isn't anti-medicine, it's pro-health. Mm-hmm. And we want to see healthy families and build healthy families, so healthy that they rely less and they depend less, and they're preparing less for a medical lifestyle, and they're preparing more for a healthy and holistic lifestyle.